Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of my Japan travel diary series. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you'll actually know that this is the second Japan travel diary series that I have made. So this is from my most recent trip to Japan, and basically I just planned on filming as much as I could while I was away. Now, I did end up deciding to sort of do this video or this Japan travel diary series in a very similar way as to the way I did the previous one, which is kind of where I talk about the trip after the fact, just like I am right now. And the reason why I decided to do it this way instead of doing it as like a traditional vlog where I talk to the actual camera is because I didn't really want to make anyone uncomfortable, and because this trip wasn't just for me to go over there and film vlogs. It was for both me and my wife to also visit family while we were away, because my wife's family is from Japan, for those who don't know. So yeah, we were over there as like a family trip. Now, I did actually forget to mention when I was filming today's video that my Instagram account has finally been opened. For some reason it got banned the second I created it for some reason, which it finally got unlocked, and the Instagram handle is pretty much the same as my YouTube channel, but I will leave a link of it in the description below for those of you who might be interested in sort of following along. I'm going to post plenty of photos on there of the trip that I took in Japan, of all of the places that I went to, as well as photos for the places upcoming, which means the photos for the next episode of my travel diary will actually go up on Instagram to kind of advertise the next video, because I definitely need to start advertising my videos better. And so yeah, that's the whole reason for my new Instagram account, so please check that out. Anyways, I just wanted to quickly mention that. I'll probably plug this somewhere close to the beginning of the video. So yeah, I hope you really enjoy this episode of my Japan travel diary series. Now, obviously the trip starts just like any other, where we headed to the airport to get on the plane. It was very early, and although again I did plan to film everything, I did not plan anything in the actual airport, just because obviously there's not really much to see and we weren't there for very long, and it was a bit of a rush and I kind of just plain forgot. Although I did take some clips from when we were actually on the plane, and they actually turned out much better than I thought they would, because the glass window on the airplane was actually quite scratched up, and I thought that they would come up in the actual video, but it actually ended up turning out alright. Now, we did also have a 1 hour layover in Hong Kong airport, and because of that there obviously wasn't much to do for an hour for a layover, so we didn't really look around Hong Kong airport very much at all while we were there. So we just pretty much sat back, watched some airplanes taking off before getting on our next flight to continue on to Osaka. Now, by the time we arrived in Osaka, it was actually pretty late in the afternoon, so we didn't really have much time to do anything, although we did meet up with my wife's mum and her auntie, and we headed back to her aunt's place because that's where we were planning on staying for the first few days of our trip. So we just pretty much headed back there and just relaxed with family, as well as just had dinner and pretty much went to bed for an early night, which, to be honest, I couldn't have asked for more than that, because honestly I was so tired after the flight. I personally just cannot fall asleep on an airplane, so basically because we got up really early the morning before and got on the flight, I was just so tired by the time we landed that I really didn't feel like doing anything anyway. So on the next day of our trip, we didn't actually have anything planned for this particular day, so everything we did do was just a complete surprise for me, which was good. So we basically started the day by going for a short walk around this lake. The weather on this particular day was just so nice. So we're actually heading out for breakfast at this nearby cafe called Aoi Napoli Umisoba. Now, just so you're all aware, I will put the names of the locations that I went to on these trips, as well as map links maybe for anyone who's interested in finding them on Google Maps. Now, I actually really liked the interior of this little cafe. It had like a really cozy vibe to it. And the surrounding area was also really nice with the lake out the front, and then behind us there was like this little park, and even though there was a main road there, it was actually really quiet, surprisingly. The food here was also really amazing. I can't remember what this soup was, but it was so good. I wish the portion size was bigger on this one, but it was just like a little starter. And as you can see here on the menu, the prices for Japan seemed maybe like they were a little bit on the higher end, but in comparison to cafe prices in Melbourne, they were still really reasonable prices. And this was the meal that we actually decided to order because it was recommended. And I gotta say, this meal was absolutely amazing. Just has like a little bit of everything, and this steak was just so good. After breakfast, we took a short walk to Sakai station to top up our metro cards because we planned on taking the tram to go to our next location. So we walked from Sakai station to the nearby tram stop. The particular tram stop that we were walking to was called Oshoji, and I think this is one of, or if not the only running tram line in just about all of Japan. Don't quote me on that, but I do think that is the case. So we took the tram from Oshoji stop to Takasu Jinsha, and from Takasu Jinsha we walked through some back streets, which walking through all of the back streets in Japan is definitely something I just personally really enjoy doing because I just like Japanese architecture and I always find it really nice to just go on a chill walk. We then arrived at our next stop, which was the Townhouse History Museum, Seigakuin. Now, unfortunately, some of the footage that I took while we're at this Townhouse History Museum was unfortunately pretty much unusable because when I was filming on my camera, my Sony ZV-E10, I had it set to aperture priority. And because some of the locations in this Townhouse Museum, the lighting was not very good, it was very dim, it basically caused the aperture priority to turn down the shutter speed, which caused very stuttery footage like you can see here. So a lot of it was unfortunately very unusable. Now, the Townhouse History Museum is actually very nice. It was a really good hidden gem, which I felt like we were the only people really there. I definitely highly recommend it for anybody who really enjoys Japanese architecture or maybe Japanese history as well, because they did have a lot of like historical artifacts and stuff there. It was definitely really nice. Highly recommend it. Now, there is actually a second building associated to this Townhouse History Museum, and in this particular building they were actually a family of blacksmiths who made firearms during the war and continued to do so after the war for a short time as well. Unfortunately, because this is a hidden gem and there's not really many tourists, all of the sort of historic information that was there was all written in Japanese. So I feel like if you don't know how to read Japanese, like I do, I'm not very good at reading Japanese, you probably won't get to learn a lot of the history side of it, but it's still really nice even just to have a look around at all of the old architecture and the old artifacts. And everything like that. It was really, really nice. Now they did have this one video on a loop that sort of shows the process from start to finish of what goes into actually forging these rifles that they were making. And it did have English subtitles for those who might be interested to watch and sort of learn the process. Now, one really cool thing that they did have at this Townhouse History Museum was this projector setup with these kind of replica forges in front of it. And it was basically a rhythm game where you could sort of follow the instructions on the screen, match the rhythm, and see how well you do in kind of replicating the forging process for how they made these weapons, like the forges that they used to make these firearms and other tools that they actually made there. Now, I did actually film my wife's attempt. She actually did really well, and so yeah, I'm just gonna let it play out for you. Again, although a lot of my footage did unfortunately become unusable, it was still really interesting to come to this location, especially if you've got an interest for Japanese architecture. I definitely highly recommend this one because the second building that had the forge and everything in there was a bit more unique than other Japanese houses. Like, the ground in the majority of the forge didn't actually have any flooring there. It was all just dirt underneath, and that's purely because you can't really build a wooden floor when you've got a hot forge going, because obviously it's a fire risk. And a lot of the ceiling in sort of the main section of the house was actually elevated, so there was just like, so all the smoke and air could sort of come out from the top of the roof. And yeah, it was just a really nice structure to see. It was really interesting and highly recommend it. Afterwards, we went for a short walk to another similar townhouse history museum, which was the Yamaguchi residence. Now, unfortunately, with the Yamaguchi residence, I don't remember a whole lot about the history. I remember a little bit about this box here, which was something that they actually used to carry geisha around in. And it was so small, like this video makes it look so much bigger than it actually was. It was really tiny. Now, they did actually have an English map, which is really good for those who obviously can't read Japanese. It just makes it very handy to be able to know sort of what each area of the house was. Now, I didn't actually notice it at the time when I was in this little room here, but right after I left, I actually found out that the floorboard in that room was actually just one big solid piece of wood, which is actually meant to be pretty rare. Now, one thing I really liked about this particular Townhouse History Museum was the garden. It was definitely a lot bigger than the previous one, and that's just something I've always really liked about old Japanese houses. After we finished looking around at the Yamaguchi residence, we headed out to lunch at this place called Tsuboichi Seicha. So Tsuboichi Seicha was a tea house rather than your typical cafe. And I gotta say, if you're a fan of green tea or just tea in general, you would really like this place. It was absolutely amazing. The interior was just such a relaxing vibe, and they had this really nice garden out the back, which really added to that sort of relaxing feel to the whole place. This was what I actually ended up getting, and it was just amazing. On the way out, they did have this little gift store where you can buy all of the teas that they actually serve there as well. And you can also buy these really nice looking tea sets, and they had a really good selection of sort of tea flavored sweets and chocolates. And one of the sweets in particular was just so good. I didn't film it, but it was really, really nice. They gave us some on the way out, and yeah, absolutely incredible. If you like tea, highly recommend this place. So after we were finished having lunch, we headed back to the station to start heading back to my wife's auntie's place. And on the way we stopped off at a store called Cook Deli Gozen, which I believe is a chain store that you can find sort of in many different places, but they have like a really good selection of bento meals as well as onigiri. So we decided to stop in here to grab a quick meal for dinner as well as a few onigiri for the next day's breakfast. So we decided to call it a night pretty early on this particular day, just because we did have a really early morning planned for the following day, where we planned a trip to go to Koyasan in Wakayama Prefecture. Now, I was actually planning to talk about the day trip to Koyasan in this same video as well, but after going through all of the footage, I decided that it would be an extremely long video if I was to do that, probably upwards of an hour if I was to go through everything. So I ultimately decided to make that the next video. Hopefully you'll all stay tuned for that day trip out to Koyasan in Wakayama Prefecture. So yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.